Please donate now, and let's bring home the win for New York City.
There he is. DB, do the honors. DB, do the honors.
Sway, before everything shut down due to COVID, we had this gentleman in the studio to promote the biographical series For Life on ABC about his wrongful conviction and imprisonment. And like you said, before we went to the music, he wound up studying law and learning about the judicial system while in prison and reversed his life sentence. He eventually passed the bar in New Jersey and became a counselor with Hunt, Hamlin, and Ridley. But today he's back with us to talk about his bid for mayor of New York City. And I had some questions like, what are we going to do about these damn fireworks every night here in Harlem? But anyway, he's here to talk about his bid for mayor. Please welcome him back, Isaac Wright Jr.
Mr. Isaac Wright Jr.
Thank you.
First and foremost, it's been a while since we've spoken with each other, seen each other, and man, you're a hero in my book. You're a hero. You know, there are people who I've had conversations with before we start talking about your mayoral run, who have been done wrongly, incorrectly. Their civil rights have been violated in the court process. And I told them about you, and they studied up law and started representing themselves, and have arrived to a point where in a lawsuit, this particular person, who's also my barber now, is potentially going to trial on his own. And I actually want to connect them with you so you could give them some insight. But the point is, you're motivating a lot of people who probably felt hopeless and helpless in these situations when it comes to law, and you showed them how you could fight the law when it's working against you. So I want to say salute to you, Mr. Isaac Wright Jr. Absolutely, man. And so we'll connect later on that. But how you been?
Man, it's been a rough ride, man. Running for mayor, especially in a city like New York, you stay underwater. I mean, you're always playing catch up, but I've learned now to breathe underwater, so it's not as bad as it was when I began. But when I'm in the last stretches, the primaries is the 22nd. That's tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So I'm, even though it's been a really, really rugged road, I'm happy about everything. I feel good. I feel invigorated. And I'm ready to be the next mayor of New York City.
Isaac Wright Jr. You guys, you heard him right there. Mm-hmm. What compelled you? Like, you've been through so much, you know what I mean? And it probably could be a whole lot easier. Life could be a whole lot easier working with the law firm. You got a steady check coming in. Mm-hmm. You got some, you know what I mean, man? You got some benefits, yes. But this right here, taking on the job of mayor, you're going to be scrutinized every single day of your life. What compelled you?
Absolutely. I'm at this point in my life, I'm one of the most sought after attorneys in the country. I mean, I get inquiries.
Right, hold up.
I'm searched out, from all over. And so this is a sacrifice for me to run for mayor of New York City. But this was also a natural progression. I've dedicated the past 30, 40 years of my life helping other people, sacrificing the things that I need and the wants that I have, for the betterment of mankind and to fight for people that can't fight for themselves. And so, COVID really, really put New York on its knees. The city lost over 500,000 jobs. Many businesses moved out. The city's really in trouble. And what people don't know about the city that's very, very dangerous is that it cannot, by law, it cannot be allowed to raise money. And so New York is bootstrapped by whatever the federal government gives them and whatever the state government gives them. And then the rest that they get, they have to actually raise taxes, but they can't do it right now. And so I understood at that point, based on what was happening to New York, that it was going to take a special person to really get New York out of that rut. It was going to take someone who was not only able to think outside the box, but was able to make the impossible possible, that was able to use the ingredients that other people didn't see, that was right there in New York, to turn things around. So it was a natural progression that I was that guy. Like no other candidate, I was the guy that was going to bring New York back around, that was going to help increase the quality of life of the people of New York. So, because of that, I threw my hat in the race, rolled up my sleeves, and got to work.
I love it, man.
I have a question.
Isaac Wright Jr., he's running for mayor of New York. Go ahead, Bizzle.
Hey, Isaac, what's up? It's Heather. How are you?
I'm good, Heather. How are you?
I'm great. I have being that so this is your first time around running for mayor of New York City. Just suppose for some reason that someone else wins, will you then spend your time, helping that mayor and just trying to be a part of that team, or will you just sort of just step back and just work on your team and building up again for the next time, folks able to vote for mayor?
Well, let me say to you like this. I can. This is not. If the people of New York decide not to choose me as mayor, it's the people of New York that is going to take a loss. And I'm saying this wholeheartedly in the sense that that's not something that I want to happen. And so I am 100% open to dedicate my time and to dedicate my life to whoever they choose in order to make New York a better place. Because ultimately, and what's first and foremost for me is for the people of New York to experience an increase in the quality of their lives. And if they choose someone else to do it, and that person then looks to me to help them along the way, absolutely, I would dedicate my time to doing that.
So let me give you a scenario, because I think one of your obvious, you have a few strong points, but criminal justice reform and police reform, I think, will be an incredible area for you. And one of the leading candidates, Eric Adams, has went publicly and explained why he supports stop and frisk. He says when it's used legally. What are your thoughts on stop and frisk?
I totally, Eric Adams, and I have to say this candidly, he really disappointed me in taking that position, and I've been on him about that since the time he took that position. There was a couple of things that I didn't agree with related to Eric Adams, but it didn't. I don't agree with everything a person says, but it's the stronger points that's important. But stop and frisk is a very, very strong point. It was something that him, as a man of color, as a former police officer, should understand that it was the wrong thing to do. And what it told me is that, okay, the police unions have already bought him. That's what that sent a message to me, because I have more intimate understanding about the criminal justice system and about the system in general than Eric Adams does in all his years of service, because he's never been on the side of the law and the side of the system and had to fight through those issues that I have. He's never done that. So I understand intimately how wrong he is by saying that. Stop and frisk is a policy that needs to be trashed and trashed forever. It actually breeds misconduct. It breeds abuse, and you don't get anything positive out of it. I understand his position. He's 100% wrong. There's no such thing, and this is very important for me to say. There's no such thing as controlling a police officer that is on the beat. He's up in his office in the mayor's office. This police officer, these police officers are in the street using their personal discretion on when they want to do a stop and frisk. And what that means is that personal discretion is anything that they feel at the time they want to use to stop a person and frisk them. So you cannot control that. And for him to say that that's something that can be controlled, that you got to stop police from abusing that, is incredibly naive to me, to the point where I know he knows better, and he's made promises now that he has to keep. Those promises are in detriment to the general public.
Isaac Wright Jr., he's running for mayor of New York. Primaries are tomorrow. The Democratic and Republican primaries are tomorrow. The general election is in November. Tracy, you want to jump in?
Yes, please. So happy to have you on the line with us, Mr. Wright. I'm curious, yes, with all of your history of New Jersey and then passing the bar, why not focus on being the mayor or the governor of Jersey versus New York?
Because I'm from New York. I mean, what a lot of people don't know about my history is that when this incident happened to me, before it happened, I moved to New York as a young kid. I was 18 years old, married very early, had a child. The first place that we lived is Edstrom Avenue on 145th Street. We went then from there to Far Rockaway when I lived in the housing complex, the projects. and then from there to Crown Heights. And by the time I moved to Crown Heights, I got a really big break. I was on Star Search for several weeks, and I parlayed that to a very successful entertainment career. This is I'm living in New York, and my ex-wife, I put her in a group that I co-founded called the Cover Girls. They were selling millions of records, so we were doing really well.
Whoa. Your ex-wife was in the Cover Girls?
Yes, Sunshine.
Oh, snap. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was a big fan of that group, but I didn't know that. All right, my bad, man. I digress. I didn't realize that. Hits, man. The Cover Girls had hits, baby. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, had a lot of hits. We were on top of the world, and so what we decided to do, and what most people did back then when they in the industry when they were coming up and they were getting a lot of money, they either moved to Westchester. They wanted to get out of the city. They wanted to take a break. They either moved to Westchester or they moved over to New Jersey. So we moved over to New Jersey, and within 9 months, I was in jail facing a life sentence. It was 9 months in New Jersey. But so I'm from, New York is my place, and that's why I'm running in New York. Now, there are other reasons why it would be logical for me to run for office in New Jersey when you look at all the things that occurred with me in New Jersey, when you look at the fight that I had with New Jersey and the way I turned things around in New Jersey. But I never lived in New Jersey as a free man in any type of significant way. Right. Most of my time, 98% of my time living in New Jersey was as a prisoner. And so when I left New Jersey, I came back to New York. Even I'm licensed in New Jersey, but I go to my office from New York. I leave New York and go to New Jersey. And when I leave my office, I come back home to New York.
Okay.
Got it.
All right. That makes sense to me. Isaac Wright Jr. is running for mayor of New York. We got some how you feel about stop and frisk. How you feel about taxes? Because another candidate who I really like, I see her on the ground a lot, Maya Wiley, and she spoke on taxes, raising taxes on the rich, and that she was supporting a bill by Robert Jackson, Democrat out of Manhattan, who wanted to raise the state income tax from a range of 7.01% to 13.81% for people earning between $300 and $100 million per year. What are your thoughts on raising taxes on the rich?
Well, this is the thing, and this is nothing against Maya. This is nothing against her. She worked with the Bill de Blasio administration, but look, one of the things about talking to people, talking to your constituents, and talking to voters to get them to know who you are, and the things that I don't like about that is telling them things that you believe they want to hear to get their votes. Poor people, lower income people that struggle every day, the average worker every day trying to make ends meet, they don't like the rich. They don't like the way that the disparity between incomes. They don't like the way that they're being held down by the societal elite. And so when you say I'm going to raise taxes on the rich, you're feeding into that mindset that really doesn't allow them to see the reality of something like that. I don't believe in raising taxes on the rich when I understand that that's not the answer. I know that's not the answer. And I'm going to give you a couple of reasons why I'm saying this. Number one, when you tax the rich, and it's happened before, over and over again, what we found that the rich still don't pay taxes. I mean, and these are the things that people are not reminding the public of. This is not the first time that we've heard politicians say that they're going to raise taxes on the rich. This is not the first time that they've actually raised taxes on the rich. And then we find out later on that the rich hardly pay any taxes, right? Because of so many write-offs after they raise the taxes, they put so many other write-offs on the book that it doesn't even make any difference. The other thing about raising taxes on the rich is that why are you going to do that when you can say, listen, the more jobs that you create, the more people that you hire, the lower we're going to put your tax rate. Because the real issue is not raising tax on the rich. The real issue is giving people more jobs. These are the people that when they look at their check, they see a third of their income gone to the government in taxes. It's them. So why don't you increase more jobs? And in turn, that increases your taxing budget. But instead, they want to say we're going to raise income taxes on the rich, knowing very well that does not work. They know that, and so that's the problem I have with raising taxes.
What does work in terms of taxes?
Jobs. Remember something. Remember what I just said. When you look at your check, almost a third of your check is gone in taxes. The average person that works for a living and brings home a check, almost a third of that is gone already. Before they even spend their money, before they even get their check, a third of that money is gone and already given to the government. What that means is that more jobs that you create, more people is getting income, and the government is getting more money. But when you raise taxes on the rich, and then they spend millions of dollars on accountants to help them save that tax dollar, you're not doing anything. You're absolutely not creating a scenario where the backbone of government is on the working class. That's still not going to change. It's going to still always be that way. So tell the truth. Tell people what it really is, and then help them after they know what it really is. The truth is that we don't need to raise taxes on the rich. We need to require the rich to create more jobs. We need to employ more people. The government's going to get that money anyway, but in the end, more people are going to be making an income. More people are going to be making a better living.
Okay, Isaac Wright Jr. is with us right now. I've been watching. Somebody in the background, I can hear you taking the call, OQ. DB, I'm sorry. I've been watching the debates. You know what I mean? And I actually like them. Debates are a little different than the last presidential run. The last two. Right. You're actually hearing a lot of policy being discussed. And, man, Mr. Wright, I'm from Oakland, California, right? But I've been living in New York for 20 years, 20 plus years now. I got Harlem in my blood. And one of the things that they have, the similarities they have, is the homelessness is just disproportionate to a degree I have never seen in Oakland, and I have never seen in New York quite the way it is. And I know there was a debate, I want to say Wednesday, I believe, and Andrew Yang took a lot of criticism. They were talking about homelessness and the mentally ill, and he said something to the tune of, yes, mentally ill people have rights, but you know who else have rights? We do, the people and families of the city. We have the right to walk the street and not fear for our safety because a mentally ill person is going to lash out at us. What are your thoughts of that? And where you stand on homelessness, eradicating homelessness?
One of the things is that shows a lack of sensitivity. It was a very insensitive comment because he has not done the job that he's supposed to do in researching these issues and understanding what it's about. I don't blame him for not knowing because he lived a different life. I blamed him for wanting to be a leader and not getting himself qualified intellectually through research on what's really going on out there. One of the things, my issue with homelessness and especially mental illness is right with the mayor's office. And as next mayor, those are things that are going to be strictly adhered to in terms of mitigating those problems, in terms of finding solutions to resolve those issues. And these are things that we can do. So for example, those two issues of homelessness and mental illness, some of it is hand in hand. A lot of people that are mentally ill are also homeless. And not just because families abandon them, it's because the burden of taking care of someone that has mental illness is an extremely difficult burden. It's an individual who a lot of times is out of your control because they're adults. There's limited amount of things that you can do for them when they refuse treatment, and the government doesn't step in to ensure, to support the city of New York, to support these families that have members of mental illness the way they're supposed to. They don't do that. They abandon their responsibility. And what needs to happen, both the fire department and NYPD needs to have mental illness units that are specifically designed to deal with the mentally ill, especially in those situations where they're homeless and on the street, and in those situations where you have these medical emergencies. And when I say that, I am not talking about people in these organizations that are going out there to arrest other individuals. I'm talking about these are medical units. For example, when you look at the fire department has a medical unit. The police department needs to have the same thing, veered specifically toward medical attention, not towards arrest and investigation. In saying that, we have to go to the housing issue and the homeless issue. One of the things that's a problem with homelessness, and there's ways to resolve that other mayors before us now haven't resolved it, and the candidates that are talking now doesn't have the right answers. When you go into a shelter, you have a family or a single mother who's ran into some issues in her life, maybe a fire in her home, maybe domestic violence, but now for whatever reason she's out in the street with her family, and now she goes into a shelter. What's supposed to be a couple of weeks or up to 30 days turns into 6 months, a year, 2 years in a shelter. That's totally ridiculous for a city of New York. And let me tell you why that's happening and what the solution is. New York at any given time has have up to 10,000 empty units in the city across all boroughs. And what the next mayor is supposed to do, and what I am going to do as the next mayor, is I will require every single landlord in the city to register their units in a central database. That central database will be connected to every shelter, to every transitional home in the city, so that at a finger's notice, these people can look and see what units are available, reach out to these landlords, and place these people who are in these shelters within 30 days to permanent housing. Because you have a lot of landlords out there that will invite them, that will invite market rent to give permanent housing to single moms and other people, who are in distress like that. And this is the reason why we're having that problem, because New York City and its bureaucracy in terms of being able to reach out and touch the ingredients that are right there in the city, i.e. these empty vacant units, have not been able to do that because they have not had the leadership that sees that these ingredients are there and that can find a way to put them together to work best for the people of New York. That's one of the things that I will change immediately, day one in office.
Okay, man. Isaac Wright Jr., man. You mind taking one or two questions?
Absolutely not.
Okay, cool, man. Citizens, he's running for mayor of New York. We know him from the series For Life on ABC. He was convicted of a crime, wrongfully accused, and he represented himself. And not only has he gotten himself the sentence reversed and expunged, he's done it with others and have gone on to be one of the most sought after attorneys in this country. So I know when it comes to criminal justice and police reform, Mr. Isaac Wright Jr., I know you should have the best plan. I heard Catherine Garcia saying she will have zero tolerance for rule infractions by police officers. Zero tolerance. Before I take these calls, what is your plan for police reform, criminal justice and police reform? And I know that's a difficult one to tackle here in New York.
It's an extremely difficult one, and again, we can't be naive about what the reality is. And when a candidate says that that they're going to have zero tolerance, for police misconduct or police infractions, it begs the question: what does that actually mean? What are you going to do about it? What does your zero tolerance entail in terms of policy issues that's going to correct these problems? And the first thing that comes out of my mind, and the issues that I know as mayor that I would face, the true issue that I know as mayor that I would face when it comes down to the NYP is not the police at all. It's the union. All right, the real problem with police is the way in which the union protects their wrongdoing. They nurture and they grow a culture of silence, a culture of quasi omnipotence, and a militarized mentality where the police do not even see themselves of servants of the people. They see themselves as an authoritarian regime over the people. And when you talk about having zero tolerance, and you talk about, and I'm going to give Mayor de Blasio as an example. He talks out about police brutality in a press conference one day. 5,000 police officers don't show up for work the next day. What is he going to do? And so just to say I have zero tolerance is not the answer. The answer is you have a union as mayor. You're going to have a union that you have to deal with that through the decades have parlayed a power base that keeps the mayor in check. And that is the truth about NYPD and the unions, that they keep the mayor in check because the mayor knows that he needs to continue to be able to protect New York City. And so the answer to that, the first thing that a mayor has to do is understand how to deal with a union. And I don't want to be, on the air giving other candidates my ideas without them coming and sitting down to me, whether I win or lose. Is Isaac, I need to talk to you about these issues. Is there something that you could tell me that can help us out? I'd rather do it that way. But let me just say this, because I don't want to specifically give these ideas out. But there's a way to deal with the NYPD police union in ways that they would come to the table and negotiate even-handedly with with the mayor. And I'm not just saying that in a vacuum. I'm going to give you some background as to why I know what I'm talking about. One of the things that you mentioned earlier on in your show is me getting released from prison. How I got released from prison, and you can do your research. All you got to do is Google it, and you'll see that this is true. I got out of prison because 7.5 years later, all my appeals are gone. I'm facing a retrial on the life sentence. I'm doing 70 years on the convictions that weren't overturned. And I'm at this final hearing to try to prove to a court of law that I was set up, that I was innocent, and that there was corrupt police and prosecutors that did me wrong. How I convinced the court of that was I got a police officer, a law enforcement officer, who was a detective in the prosecutor's office when I was arrested, who now turned out 7.5 years later to be the chief of the police academy. I got this man, and he was a white officer. I was a young black man. I got this man, this law enforcement officer, to confess on the stand where he put himself in prison in order that I may go free. Okay? And that's significant for me to say, because in order for me to do that, I had to understand how to dig through all that corruption and touch the human being in this officer, that humanity. My intimacy with law enforcement allows me to understand how I need to deal with the unions in order to be able to at least get to the table and start bridging the gap through policies and procedures and agendas and programs, bridging the gap between what the community sees in law enforcement and what law enforcement sees in themselves. And there's no other candidate with the background to do that better than me.
Isaac Wright Jr. I find his story fascinating, which is why he's on the show with us today. 50 Cent has gone public and said that you're a really solid guy. Does that mean he's endorsing you? Will we see 50 on the campaign trail with you?
Well, 50 actually was the first one, to jump up right there by my side and say, "Listen, Isaac," and this is his exact words. We don't even need to have a conversation. You tell me what you want, and you got it. And he's always been there from the very first day that I met 50. He's showed me that kind of respect, and it's mutual. It's reciprocal. I have the utmost respect for him. He's been with me from day one. He will continue to be with me. The unfortunate thing right now is that the primaries is tomorrow, so we're coming to the end of this phase of these proceedings, and I'm hoping that the people of New York allow us to start a new phase to move into the general election. And if they do, 50 will be right there with me, right by my side.
There it is. And speaking of the people from New York, since the primaries are tomorrow, you're speaking directly with a lot of folks from New York. So Marissa is in Brooklyn, and she has a direct question for you, Mr. Isaac Wright Jr. Marissa, Grand Risings.
Hi, how are you?
Doing great.
I'm good. How are you?
How's everything? I was just wondering how you're going to balance police reform with the crazy spike in crime in New York City that we all cannot turn a blind eye to.
Oof.
That's an incredible question, and I'm glad you asked it. The first thing that has to be done is to have a realistic understanding on what it means to be a police. Like, what do we expect from our law enforcement officers? And so, it's important for me to say that as mayor of New York, I would look at law enforcement for just what they are. They enforce the law and they investigate crime. When it comes down to crime prevention is responsibility of the community. When crime happens, the police come after it happens 90% of the time, 98% of the time, they show up after it happens. And we cannot expect them to be crime preventers when the first people, the people that are ground zero, is people in the community. But let me give you a good example of why I'm saying what I'm saying. A violent crime occurs in the community. That violent crime usually is a result of a conflict that has occurred previously. The public and the people in the community knows about these conflicts. They know that these are conflicts that can ultimately turn into violence. And so there are grassroots organizations in these communities all over the city whose specific responsibility is to identify these conflicts, to mitigate them and resolve them before they turn into crimes and violent crimes. The mayor's office, the full force power of the mayor's office should be behind these grassroots organizations. They should be fully funded, and they should be allowed and be able to work with law enforcement in order to weed out these conflicts. And I'm not saying these organizations are supposed to be an investigative tool of law enforcement. Absolutely not. What I'm saying is that these organizations should be empowered and funded to continue to resolve these issues. And if violence does occur, they should be right there on the scene, right along with law enforcement, to understand how that happened, how that got past them. These are the things that mitigates the crime level. These are the things that law enforcement needs. Law enforcement needs the cooperation of the community in order to bring down the crime rate. They need the community involved in preventing crime in order to bring down the crime rate. And New York City's next leader needs to understand that importance and be in a position to be able to bridge that gap, to be able to support these grassroots organizations so they can do the jobs that they need to do in order to make New York safer, right along with the law enforcement.
Okay. Hey, Marissa.
Yes, I totally agree. And I would ask you, my last question is, do you think fatherlessness and lack of after-school activities for kids, because I've done research on it a lot, and most crimes of teenagers and kids happen between the times of 3 to 7 when they're getting out of school, they don't have anything to do, but their parents are still at work. Would you do anything to help guide kids not to get into gangs or steal or fight or anything like that during those hours, because they really don't have anywhere else to go because of a lack of funding at the schools, or they don't have a father at home, or their mother's working 2 jobs to support them? How would you go about helping the community with that?
Well, those are also significant questions, and they require 2 specific answers dealing with very, very unique policy agendas that I have in those areas. One is the area of education, and the other is the area of direction. And in terms of education, I need to give a quick backdrop so that I can explain how this actually trickles down into avoiding and mitigating some of the troubles that these young kids get into. So, when you look at the neighborhood of Bay Ridge, and I'm using Bay Ridge as an example of a really nice neighborhood where the property values are very high. Schools are funded based on property values. And so a school in Bay Ridge is going to get more money than a school in East New York. And what happens is that disparity in the quality of education trickles down throughout the collective. It trickles down where there's the quality of education is worse, where the extracurricular activities for these kids, are not as great. Even where the school environment, school safety is affected. And so these kids that are in those areas, that are in the areas of East New York, when they leave their home, and people in New York, they struggle to survive. They leave their home and they leave that agitating environment, where they see mom and dad or mom, struggling to make ends meet, and they leave that. They go to school, which is supposed to be a free, really exciting environment for them to live, and they see the same kind of hopelessness. And the reason is because of the disparity in school funding. And so for me, if Bay Ridge gets $1 million, I'd say scrap the property value issue. If Bay Ridge gets $1 million for a school, East New York should get $1 million for a school. There should be equalizations across all communities in the value of education and in budgeting education, so that when these kids go to school and they have increased extracurricular activities, very, very high quality, exciting extracurricular activities, increased in high quality education, it becomes a place where they want to be. It becomes an exciting refuge for them to learn and to grow. And so that's one of the policy agendas that I have, is to equalize funding in the school system throughout the city of New York. The other issue, which is extremely significant, is what happens after school? What about these younger kids coming out of high school? You have 17, 18-year-old kids graduating, coming out of high school that, turn to gangs, wound up in prison, or even worse. And one of the reasons why is because a lot of these kids, they have incredible ideas, but they're not going to college, and they have no guidance. They have nothing to prop them up. There's a program that I have called a Young Entrepreneur Program, where the city, as mayor of New York, the city will give these young kids that's coming out of high school but are not going to college, that have great ideas, they will give them grants to start their own business. Imagining thousands of 17, 18, and 19-year-olds being able to be young entrepreneurs, starting their own business. The city's behind them. We mentor them for 18 months so that they can grow their wings and fly. This is something that a city has a responsibility to do, and a mayor has to ensure as the city's leader. And this is one of the things that I would be doing from day one. It would not only bring down this delinquency, but it will give these kids the kind of direction that they need coming out into adulthood, trying to find their own way. And that's something that I'm going to do as New York City's next mayor.
All right, man. Hey, Marissa, I love your questions. Thank you, Marissa. You are a citizen, okay, Marissa?
Sway in the morning.
Thank you.
Don't defund the police. We need them. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Marissa, appreciate you. Salute. Marissa, all about it there, Mr. Wright Jr.
Great questions. Yeah, great questions.
Absolutely. Well, I wanted to give you this platform because I know how it is. Like you said, it's extremely hard. And if you ain't a front runner, if you're not a marquee name, you don't get the headlines, you don't get the coverage. But you're family here. And we want to make sure you got a chance to speak your piece and talk about your policies. The primaries, if you're in New York City, for Democrats and Republicans, is, tomorrow. And so make sure you guys get out there. If you want to find out more about Mr. Isaac Wright Jr., go to Wright for NYC 2021.com. So that's Wright, WRIGHT 4 FOR New York City, which is NYC 2021.com. Find out what his campaign is all about. Hey, man, good to talk to you. Keep rising, brother. Keep rising.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Sway. Thank you very, very much. And in addition to my website, if you want to go on my Instagram, I have a lot of stuff related to my policies. I have a lot of information there related to my background. It's Isaac Wright Jr. at Isaac Wright Jr. Come see me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or come on my website. Check me out. Go to the polls. Today is early voting. Go to the polls tomorrow. At last day of voting, vote Isaac Wright Jr. It's ranked choice. Vote for me, number one, as your next mayor of New York City. Thank you so much, Sway.
Absolutely,
thank you so much,
brother. We'll talk soon, man. All right, and keep pounding, baby. We got you. Yep. Salute. All right. Oh, man, that dude was wrongfully convicted. Spent time behind bars.
Crazy.
Come on.
Got the